What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the Altar again, and this time we are here with Elina of Leaves Eyes. It is so great to be able to talk with you. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, it's such an honor to have you here. First thing is always first. Mists of Fate is a fantastic album. This is your third edition with the band. Was there sort of like a vision in mind in a way? Was this almost kind of like a sequel or a continuation of The Last Viking? Or was this meant to kind of be new uncharted territory for Leaves Eyes, being that it was 4 years since the last release?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was not actually tied to the previous albums, and it was a conscious decision that we made that we wanted to steer away a little bit from the historic topics. So it's more about myths and all these mysterious sagas that Alex was writing about for this album. So yeah, it's not. It's kind of like its own intensity. It's
Being that this was more inspired by mythology and more inspired by not historical references, events, not on things that actually happened. Did you approach this differently as a songwriter and as a vocalist? Did you almost feel like this was a different energy, or did it feel like maybe that there was more spirituality in this album versus more sort of like historical aspects?
I think the topics always affect the music, of course. It goes hand in hand together with the music. So it then affects also my vocals, obviously. So everything affects everything. So when you're singing about battles, then the music is going to be a little bit different. It's going to require a little bit more, a different approach, in my opinion. So for me, it wasn't maybe so conscious all the time, but it just makes you approach it differently. And for sure, for other reasons as well, this album is a little bit different. So in every way, it was a great journey to make it, and including, of course, my own vocals. So yeah, I would say yes, it was different.
Whether it is singing about mythology or history, do you almost feel like as the vocalist you are the narrator in a way, or do you almost feel like you're portraying whoever that song is about, whatever god or Viking or figure?
It depends, of course, because sometimes I am in the narrator role, and sometimes I am the actual person, or in this case, mythical, god, goddess, or everything. So it's again dictated by the text and the topic, and of course it also affects how I approach it. But I like it. I like both sides, to be the narrator, and then also sometimes to take a bit more personal approach to the song.
Does it almost feel in a way, I know you kind of just answered this, but I feel like that Myths of Fate is still sort of like tied, because like with a track like Hammer of the Gods, that sounds so Viking-esque, if you would say, but like, and the Sign of the Dragon God as well, because like I think having that sort of mythological element in there, does it almost feel like that? It almost seems like Leaves Eyes combines mythology and history together. It almost seems like as if they were happening simultaneously with each other and they were both equally real.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's of course, we say, or it is the truth that this album is more about these mystical creatures and magical things, but they are also, of course, tied into these Viking sagas and historic things. I mean, it is actually the things that people were believing back then. So, it is tied into the real world as well. It's not just, you can't separate them. So you are right with that. Yeah.
Has there ever been a time where maybe your personal life or your personal experiences have also been a source of inspiration for this music as well? Or do you look at this as do you look at Leaves Eyes as more of an escapism, as a means of maybe being somebody who you're not in your everyday life?
The role in Leaves Eyes is definitely a little bit different than, for example, in my own band, the way I write. But of course, for this album, I also wrote the text and the melody for In Eternity, and it is a very personal song. It is about Alex's mother, so For me, most of the time the writing comes from personal topics. It's something I can't really help. Not everything, but it's often tied into some personal experiences, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be sad or whatever, but it's just something is always there, an essence of it.
I love how people assume that a lot of people assume that when you sing, when people say, "Oh, this is a very personal song," a lot of people immediately jump to the conclusion that it's something negative, like it's about a loss or some sort of trial and tribulations. I'm really glad you mentioned that. Like a lot of people
Yeah.
take the term, "Oh, it's personal." That means it's going to be a melancholy song.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I also wrote a lot of other, yeah, it can be any emotion or any things, and most of them I don't even want to explain what it is about. People can make their own interpretation of the songs. I prefer it sometimes like that.
When you joined Leaves Eyes for the Sign of the Dragon Head, and were taken on as a member, were you kind of looking at the earlier material, being like, "This is how I have to sing. This is the vocal style that this band is all about"? Or, given your very impressive work with Angel Nation, for example, were you kind of like given a bit of your opportunity to bring your own mix into Leaves Eyes?
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible to become or imitate someone else. It's not interesting in my opinion. I always knew that I would have to come in as myself, as a completely different person, different voice, different everything, and then bring hopefully something new into the band as well. It's of course you there's certain elements in the music that you want to keep there, and you want to try and bring them there vocally as well, but it's not interesting to try and copy someone else or anything like that. It's not even possible. So I think it's also a natural involvement for the band when a new member comes in. So I think that's also part of it. What's the point then if it's just going to stay exactly the same?
Of course. I am curious though, because I love that 3 albums that you are with Leaves Eyes, but I've listened to Leaves Eyes for such a long time now, and Elegy is one of my favorite songs in the whole symphonic metal genre, and with albums such as Symphonies of the Night or Vinland Saga or Lovelorn, these are very magical albums as well. But watching videos of you play live, you nail it. I love how you're able to really bring your own voice into and bring new life to these songs. Do you maybe have though like a different attachment to singing the earlier material as opposed to the stuff that you were there for the songwriting of? Does it almost feel like a different energy in a way, or maybe even a different strategy?
I think it really depends on the song again. Like there's some songs before my time that I really enjoy singing. Some of them maybe don't fit my voice perfectly, I would say, in my opinion. Like I have to kind of find a way to make it my own. And then of course the attachment is different when I've been more involved. It is of course like that. You've seen the whole process of creating the song and you've been there recording it, so it's a different feeling than singing live as well. But for me it's about music, it's about songs, so it's not really, if something fits and it feels good, then that's the way it is.
And upon you joining Leaves Eyes, one thing that was amazing about you joining Leaves Eyes is I discovered another band that I didn't know of, and that's Angel Nation. I am just truly, I love Tears of Lust, and I love, Eon. I think these are fantastic records. Is it a different creative mindset singing with Angel Nation as opposed to Leaves Eyes? Is it almost a different side of who you are, or do you kind of have like a method behind the madness that just kind of applies to every project you've been involved with?
Well, it is different. The whole process is, of course, different. For me, then writing the texts, lyrics for Angel Nation, and basically writing the music also, and then together with the guys. And yeah, it is definitely a different kind of feeling, but it's not better or worse. It's just like, especially for this new album, Myths of Fate, I was also much more involved. And for me personally, my journey with my voice has been something very focal for me. So I felt the best now recording this album. And I wish I could go back and do all the other albums now again. But it's part of the process and journey. So now going forward, it's again going to be different, writing new material. So life is about involvement, and that's the way it is. It's yeah.
Speaking of evolution, though, you led me perfectly to what I wanted to ask you next. And that is, this year does mark 10 years of the debut of Angel Nation, Tears of Lust. And again, I still think it's a fantastic album, because with a track like Lullaby or Insane or Higher Ground, Never Ending, these are magical songs. What was going through your mind with the making of that? I mean, I don't know if this was the first time you ever made an album or the first album we've heard from you, but like, you have your whole life to make your first record, and you definitely hit the ground running with it. What was the sort of idea behind that album, and how would you say the evolution came from there on out?
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, I'm glad to hear that. It's, of course, a special one. It's the very first one, album I ever made, and it was together with Shadow, the guitar player. We worked really closely, and were kind of us against the world back then. It was like really exciting times, and starting everything and recording, and of course, it's something very special about it. It's a very personal album. Also, all the topics there are, going back now thinking about it. It's quite a impact. It really started it all for me. Especially Last Time Together was the actual song that started everything in this genre for me. So it's nice to go back and still see that people like it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's such a underdiscovered album, or people really need to like hear it. I've been with every time people talk about Leaves Eyes, I always ask, "Oh, have you also heard of Alina's other band, Angel Nation?" So, being that you also play keyboards for that band as well, being a multi-instrumentalist, do you maybe express a different side of yourself on the keyboards as you do than you do as a vocalist, or do they kind of express the same thing?
I think it's a different thing. I mean, for me, it's a tool of me being able to write music, and it also evolved in time how much I was using the keys within the mixes or within the production of everything. So for me, it was never like the focal point. I never really consider myself as a keyboardist. I'm just know kind of how to play, and I don't know how to play guitar, unfortunately. So it's the way I write music, and then it's everything else that comes around and makes it together, ties it together. So vocally, I'm much more precise, much more ambitious, I would say, much more everything. It's just a different way of expressing yourself, also with your own voice.
Well, I also think with piano as well that it's kind of, and I don't say this as in a negative way, but I feel like piano's a little bit more limited. A C is always going to be a C, an A is always going to be an A. With guitar, you could bend the string as much as you want. You could add different effects on it. You could add, all these different things, unharmonize it to kind of adjust it. With piano, if you can't play that C, you ain't playing a C. So I think that's...
it's a different kind of way of playing, but of course it's also incredible instrument. I mean, you can hear great pianists too in my family, my father and brother. And of course Jonah, who created all our orchestrations, he's an absolutely amazing keyboard player as well. So it's also a great instrument, but I know what you mean. It's a little bit different.
With your work in Angel Nation, but also because I consider Leaves Eyes to almost be like a super group, of course with the association of Atrocity as well, but I know that Joris has played with Deathless Void, and I know that there's a lot of other different bands involved. Do you think that maybe allows you to bring new stuff into Leaves Eyes? Because between the last Leaves Eyes album, The Last Viking, and now you also released the last Angel Maker record as well. So do you think that maybe playing with different bands could bring new stuff into Leaves Eyes?
Well, it's pretty normal that everyone usually has a little bit of other things. It's also nice to bring different kind of styles or whatever anyone wants to do. Um, but I think the biggest change for us, of course, was the fact that Tosso was not in the band this time. So it changed the dynamic naturally a little bit. So we had to look other ways of writing, and also, of course, mentioned also Jonah, that he was sending us these amazing orchestrations that we were then turning into songs, and it was just a different kind of process this time. And everybody, of course, always brings their own influences and everything into the band, me included, of course. But it's individuals coming together as a group, creating something, and it's it's sometimes you have to shake things up and see what comes up, and it's really interesting.
Going back to like the more songwriting process, because again, I really think you have a fantastic vocal range and the way that you're able to harmonize, like a great technical vocalist. There's also lyrics that you have to bring in as well. Have you ever written lyrics, whether for Leaves Eyes or Angel Nation? Have you ever wrote lyrics that maybe helped guide the direction of the sound? We kind of touched upon that earlier with the concepts of this new Leaves Eyes album, but do you think that lyrically that could help guide the sound in a way, or do you prefer to have music before you know what the lyrics are?
That depends a little bit. Sometimes I have a line in my head, for example, a lyrical line, and then it almost instantly is connected to a melody, though. It's very difficult for me to separate the two. So they come very quickly together. But it can start with a lyrical idea as well. And then it starts to build. But of course, the lyrics, they will influence the music a lot, because, yeah, with a certain kind of text, you're not going to write certain kind of music. It just doesn't fit, or the other way around. So, yeah, definitely.
I've always wondered, like, if somebody were to like take an Amon Amarth lyric and just totally make like a rap song out of it or something like that. Like, I wonder how, like Viking hip hop. That's a genre that hasn't happened yet. Somebody make that happen.
You never know. I mean, that's the thing. You have to try them.
Yeah, we MC Thor. Let's see if that ever happens.
Yeah.
When it comes to expressing your vocal range, though, because obviously when you're playing live and there's crowd interaction and atmosphere, you're able to kind of go all in and let it all out. But when you're in the vocal booth and you're in the recording studio and it's a very static and very controlled environment, do you find it maybe like, how do you sort of capture that live energy in a vocal booth that's so confined?
Yeah, it is not always easy, and of course, usually when you record songs, you haven't played them live yet, so you don't have that feeling of playing them live, because you have to record them first. So it's sometimes, yeah, it would be nice to go back after playing the songs live and then go back and record them again, because it is a different energy and you learn so much by playing live. Yeah. It gives you other things as well, but we have also extensive process how we do the pre-production, so everything it's not just like 1 second and then you're in the booth. So you go through, you plan, you think, you try all kinds of things, and even in the recording situation you still might want to try something else. So it's not really so confined. You are able to try out things, and sometimes it's surprising what ends up working the best at the end. You have to try some crazy stuff sometimes.
I've heard studio stories that I like. Oh my god! Like I would love to be a fly on the wall in any recording session for any album, because I've heard everything from it's the most boring experience in the world to like absurd, like one of the just sheer madness sometimes.
Yeah.
When singing about mythology and history, is there a lot of like exploring? Do you like explore like a lot of literature as well? Like, is there almost kind of like a lot of research that goes into the subject matters that you're singing about?
Yeah, well, Alex does that a lot. Of course, he's the main guy writing the lyrics for Leaves Eyes, so he is already very knowledgeable about on all the topics, but he also does a lot of research and reads a lot, and then he also, of course, brings these topics to us, and of course, I need to know what the song is about, and it's always really fascinating learning and hearing these stories, sagas, and everything. So yeah, it's also a learning experience for me, which is great.
I interviewed Alex. I can't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago to promote the latest Atrocity album, and I was just astonished by just like we talked more about like history and all this stuff than music,
Yeah.
and it's honestly insane. I don't know what it is. It just seems like symphonic metal or that style just like brings some of the most intelligent like conversations about history. It just seems like everybody in symphonic metal has a knowledge on these subject matters as well.
Yeah, it could be, and it's of course especially a band that's tied into the historic, topics. Then you have to have it for sure.
Could you ever see maybe a future Leaves Eyes album focusing on the present, or maybe even having the future as a subject matter as well?
Focusing on what? Sorry.
Like the present or the future?
Oh, right. Well, I think that's something you probably have to ask Alex. I don't know. We'll see what the. There's so many things to take inspiration from in this. So I don't think we can really run out of topics. But who knows? Who knows? Maybe someday.
So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time and for another fantastic Leaves Eyes album. It's truly just a magical experience, and I encourage everybody to check it out. Is there just anything else with the release of Myths of Fate that you would like to promote in terms of upcoming shows or tours? Anything you want to promote with Leaves Eyes or Angel Nation? Maybe a U.S. tour somewhere in the works, please?
Yeah, we've been asked about that a lot, so we really hope to come back there. It's been too long, and we just toured Europe now, which was amazing. Really looking forward to playing more shows. I mean, the feedback we've gotten from the album has been really great, so thank you as well. I'm glad you like it, and I hope people will also check out the amazing videos. We have 5 videos out. And yeah, get into the album and enjoy it, and hope to play it live for you very soon.
We'd love to hear it. Thank you so much. Everybody, Leaves Eyes. Be sure to check out Myths of Fate. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.